Hi, I'm Lou Scott, and this is the Gepetto Room, where you don't have to be creative to be creative. You just have to be yourself. Now, science tells us that in our Milky Way, there are 100 billion stars. Big number, big number. That's a 10 followed by 11 zeros. Now, science also tells us that in our brain, because of all the neurons, we have the ability to create pathways to think. And this is the number, 10 to the 800th power. That's 10 followed by 800 zeros. That's a gazillion number. That's big. That's got to be a bigger number than all the stars in the universe that we know, and the universe that we're going to find. That's a big number. And that's what this show is all about. How do we get into the potential of that brain to be able to do transformative thinking, paradigm-changing thinking? That's how we're going to do it, okay? Because that kind of thinking is very important today, ladies and gentlemen. I'll tell you why. Because we can't solve new problems with old ideas. We're going to have to solve problems with transformative ideas. So here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to use my pieces back here, my dioramas, as visual aids. But I'm going to spend time telling you the story that the piece depicts. That's going to initially open up some of your pathways of your brain, which you can help yourself to make decisions later on. Then I'm going to get to a point where it's a Gepetto moment, a technique that I use to try to stimulate those potential in my brain in order to produce this piece, in order for you to actually be able to create ideas, better ideas, business ideas, social ideas, financial ideas, government ideas, because we need new ideas to go on into the future. Okay, let's go to the first piece. Now this piece I call Going at Night. Now, I'm a great believer in global warming. I believe it. But even as a believer, global warming, climate change, even as a believer, I find some of the predictions weird. Let me give you an example. Now I easily understand that if the ice caps melt and the oceans rise, right, you're going to have flooding on the coast. That makes sense to me. However, what doesn't make sense, which is one of the predictions, if the Earth heats more, we're going to lose all the rare coffee beans that are planted in the world. Coffee beans? That's a little weird, and I'm a believer. Now, recently, before I did this piece, I was having a conversation with a non-believer. He's really confused. And I was talking about the idea that, if we lose this planet, where are we going to live and so forth? He said, no, Lou, wait. Yes, we'll go to another planet. We could go to the sun. I said, the sun? He says, yes, we go to the sun. I said, well, sir, the sun is not a planet, one. And two, it's about 11,000 degrees Fahrenheit. You're not going to live long. No. He said, really? No. We'll go at night. It's cooler. Go at night? It's cooler. He actually said that. Now, he's either very confused, very stupid, or he's putting me on. I don't know what the reason was. But the real point of it is, and here's the Gepetto moment, how did I get the input in that conversation to create this piece? How I did it was I listened in a focused way. It's called focused listening. Most people listen, somebody's talking, they'll listen, and then until it's their turn to talk. That's not the way to listen. The way to listen is with your whole body. Listen with your eyes. Listen to what's not being said. Listen to what the gut is telling you. Watch his movements and so forth. When you do that in focused listening, what will happen is you'll get more information, more data. Think about it. If you're in a business meeting and somebody is discussing data and you have to make a decision on that, how much better the decision will be if you hear more. Focused listening is the way to do that. Listen with your whole body. Listen for the silences. That's the Gepetto moment. This is the second one. This is what I call As the Elephants Go. Unfortunately and sadly, we are losing, elephants are being poached 100 a day for stupid reasons. for an artifact made out of ivory, for if they grind down the tusk, they think that that's going to be an aphrodisiac. It's nonsense, nonsense. But meanwhile, these elephants are dying, are being killed. In less than a decade, at this rate, we will not have any elephants. They will be extinct. But that's only half the story. The rest of the story is that elephants actually fertilize the ground that they're on. Where they're going, they create, their droppings create fertilizer, that is, grows trees and grows fauna and so forth. So, when they die, so does the land that they go. It becomes a desert. Now that's how I created the piece. Now here's a Gepetto moment. What did I do? Simply, I dreamt it. Now, I dream in a particular way. When I go to bed, I lay down in what the Buddhists call a corpse position, laying flat, hands down. And I breathe deeply, and I get into that beautiful twilight zone between sleep, subconscious of sleep, and being awake. At my side, on the side of my bed, I have a pencil and a pad. Now, if I dream and I don't have a pencil and pad, when I wake up in the morning, most likely I'll never remember the idea that came to me in the dream. But if I wake up, I'll be able to write it down. Now, one of the beautiful things about that is that not only are you recording the dream, okay, but if the dream and the idea exists the next day, in other words, if it lasts through the night, it's a transformative idea. Sometimes you'll wake up and you'll see that the idea is not good. The dream was terrific, but the idea is not good. But other times, the idea is good. If it's good, as I said, that's a transformative idea, go with it. So the second Gepetto moment was simply, I dreamt it in that particular way. Let's go to the third piece. Now, Bill Ramage, who is the curator of the downtown galleries, there are 7 galleries downtown, he's the curator, and he spent a lifetime creating wonderful paintings of the self. Now think about that. Who are we? We think about who we are, what people think of us. We have many selves, and that's what he painted. For example, psychiatrists, the onion, psychiatrists look at us and use a metaphor. They peel away the onion, looking for our neurosis, our relationships with our parents, looking for us, looking for ourselves. That's what psychiatrists do. Religion tells us, forget about the self, forget it. We're going to go to heaven, and the soul is going to reign, so we don't care about ourselves. Okay. Most interesting, today in Harvard and Columbia and other medical institutions under FDA regulations, there are experimenting with mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, and LSD. Not like Timothy Leary, not like craziness. This is actually therapy. And on these trips, and they found some wonderful, wonderful results. For example, people who are cancer victims, terminal patients, when they come out of this therapy, they have a different thing of life. They see themselves differently. They're not afraid of death. They've had great success with addiction, okay? With actually curing addiction using psychedelic ways, seeking the self, seeking the consciousness. The other people tell us that the self is in part of our brain that's called a default network, okay? Now, those are confusing selves. However, it's even made more confusing when we think about all the roles we play. We're a parent, we're a son, we're a daughter, we're a boss. Whatever we might be, those are roles that complicate the self. Now, that's complicated like that. Now, how did I come up with this concept of this piece? I brain mapped it. Brain mapping. If you remember anything about this particular show, remember to get a book on brain mapping because it's a tool for transformative thinking you will use all your life. Now here's how brain mapping works, simply. Instead of writing your ideas linear down, what you do is you diagram your ideas. Remember when you were in school and you were doodling, and the teacher was talking, but you were doodling? Now, you weren't really wasting time. What you were doing is using a piece of the brain that maybe the other people who were paying attention weren't using. But that was productive doodling. Well, that's what this is. You put down the problem, the self, and then you put extension lines, and I come up with onion, all the different ideas that I had for the pieces, the symbols. I put lines. If the two lines are related, what you do is you draw a dotted line, or anything else you want to do. People brain map by using colored pencils. People brain map by creating their own symbols. It doesn't make any difference. Once you start to learn how to brain map like that, it's amazing how your brain will open up. You'll be using much more potential of your brain, I assure you. Now, in lieu of not having artists to interview, because again, I like to interview artists because by nature, they're transformative. I brought this example of a piece I brought along, and the story about it is a demonstration or an illustration of really transformative thinking, literally. Obviously, you look at this piece, I did about a year ago, you see a woolly mammoth, you see an egg, I call it being reborn, and you see a diaper. Now, it's goofy and it's comical, but it's based on some very serious science. In the permafrost, which is part of Siberia, where the temperature can go to 60 or 70 degrees below zero, okay, you have a permafrost frosted for years and years. 10,000 years ago, on that property was woolly mammoths, wild horses, cattle that could withstand that temperature and so forth, and they were living on that land. Obviously, they're extinct 10,000 years ago. Now, because global warming, what's happening is that the permafrost is melting. Now, they thought it would only melt 3 or 4 inches, but now it's about 25 to 30 feet. Now, here's the problem with that, which was discovered by this individual, who's an astrophysicist, who's been living there for 40 years. He discovered that trapped in the permafrost is more, listen to this, more methane, more gases, global warming gases than there are in all our cars, all our cows, all our oil refineries trapped. If that melts and reaches our atmosphere, it'll be catastrophic. Now, he's up there, and now he's finally believed, because many times transformative thinking is not believed. He's believed. He's up there running a tractor, cutting down the trees, because trees capture heat. You've got to get rid of the trees there in order to keep it cool. He's running cattle that can withstand the heat and so forth, that can withstand the cold. And he's doing other things, but one of the things, interesting enough, which is transformative, because he's found hundreds of woolly mammoth bones that the DNA can still be extracted from. He is working with the leading geneticists in the world, led by a geneticist, I don't know his name right now, who's at Harvard. And they believe that within 10 years, 7 or 8 years actually, they will be able to clone a woolly mammoth. Their idea is to actually reproduce these mammoths, who will then become natural to this territory, who will then nurture and keep the permafrost cold. Now that's a creative idea. That's a paradigm-changing idea. And I just want to use that example to show you in lieu of not having an artist now. I'm not having an artist because downtown, running now, is a wonderful, wonderful show. There are 65 artists, all over 70, showing 300 pieces in the gallery at 77 Grove Street. Last time I talked about the idea that a way to stimulate your brain is to experience art. Artists by nature are transformative people. They don't think linearly, okay? Go to this show. I assure you, it'll be wonderful to go to the show. You'll expand your brain. You'll really enjoy yourself. Bring your friends. It's worth it to see that many pieces and to understand that Vermont has some very, very creative and transformative artists. That brings us to an end. Let me just review some of the things we discussed. We discussed three Gepetto moments, one of which was focused thinking, focused listening with your whole body, listening with your eyes. We talked about the idea of dreaming in the way I described, with a pencil and paper. That beautiful moment between the twilight zone. That's a good technique to expand your brain. And then we talked about brain mapping. That probably is the most important one. There's many books. I recommend you get a book on brain mapping and make it part of your life, and your life will be better. Why will it be better? Because you'll be making better decisions, all kinds of decisions, all the decisions you have to make. Again, let me say this. We cannot solve new problems with old ideas. Our ideas have to be transformative. So with that, let me just say thank you. I hope the time was valuable. I hope we see you again. And until that time comes, I'm Lou Scott. This is Gepetto Room, and goodbye for now.